From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sweeney Gray. The Brazilian presidential candidate Fernando Haddad is campaigning in a Rio de Janeiro favela with vice presidential candidate Manuela de Avila. The candidates were greeted by throngs of supporters as Haddad came out strongly against financial interests while advocating for more public investment. Haddad also denounced political opponents for destabilizing Brazil's democracy.
The living expenses ceiling is a measure that doesn't work because it doesn't create fiscal room for investment. And without public investment, with families unable to consume, without cheap credit, the economy won't pick back up and the finance problems will get worse instead of better.
Haddad is now in first place in the presidential opinion polls. This according to a poll published on Thursday by the pollster of Vox Populi. He was 4 points ahead of the far-right candidate, Jair Bolsonaro. Two other new polls put Haddad in second place, but gaining rapidly on Bolsonaro. This comes just 2 days after the former president, Lula da Silva, endorsed Haddad as his replacement.
It has been traumatic, and we have to work on this politically. No one wanted this situation, but between giving up the project and repositioning in this way, we have decided, and Lula has decided to reposition ourselves in the race. As Lula said, we have a project, an idea. There is no point in stopping it, because someone will always follow the legacy, and the people will support it.
International dignitaries are meeting in Sao Paulo to extend their support to the jailed former Brazilian president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Among the participants are the former prime ministers of France, Italy, Spain, and also members of the Workers' Party. They are discussing the stakes of Brazil's upcoming presidential elections in the absence of the most popular leader, Lula da Silva. Politicians described his situation as an attack on democracy. A number of those dignitaries visited Lula at the Curitiba jail.
The exclusion for the upcoming presidential election, in spite of the ruling of the appeal of the United Nations Committee of Human Rights of the candidate who would enjoy the greatest popular support, constituted I don't say a coup d'etat, but something similar in a new modern form.
Today, we are at the turning point here in Brazil, where either Brazil chooses the road of democracy, continues respecting its rules and its demands, which are to satisfy what is most important to the people, or the opposite.
It's been 6 months since the Brazilian councillor Marielle Franco and her driver Anderson Gomes were murdered. The case remains unsolved. Social movements, members of her party, her family, and her widow are expected to hold a vigil on Friday. They're demanding progress in the investigation and that those responsible be brought to justice. 6 months after the crime, the security minister acknowledged that the police were involved.
It is a feeling of pain reinforced by a feeling of injustice. I am fighting to resolve the investigation with a right result. I don't want them to give us an answer just to close down the case.
6 months after the assassination of the councillor, Marielle Franco, and his chauffeur, Anderson Gomes, the people mobilized and demand a response from the state. People denounce militarization in Brazil, and also the consequences of that intervention ordered by Michel Temer government. People demand justice for Marielle Franco, and to ask the state about who killed Marielle Franco and who gave the order for it. Citizens mobilized to ask for justice for this unsolved crime and to tell the world that Marielle Franco's legacy is still alive.
We thank Andre Vieira for that report. A team from UNESCO is in Brazil assessing the damage to the National Museum after the fire on September 2nd. They will help researchers sort through the rubble and ash to find salvageable artifacts. But much of the museum's collection, spanning centuries, has been lost.
We're thinking about covering part of the collection to protect it from rain. We are talking it over. You need to understand we are just beginning and we are establishing the necessary protocols to carry on with the work.
At least 4 people have died as Hurricane Florence ripped through North Carolina. A mother and her infant were killed when a tree fell on their house in Wilmington. Another woman died of a heart attack in Hampstead, according to the local police. Hurricane Florence made landfall near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. According to the National Hurricane Center, the storm hit with an estimated maximum winds of 144 kilometers per hour. Heavy rain and flooded have inundated some areas. Thousands are without power.
Wind and waves are driving seawater through some coastal streets like rivers. Nearly 30,000 people in North Carolina already are without power, and that number is rising. I believe that we have the resources we need to meet this crisis. We know, though, that we are in the early days and that we are going to need significant resources for cleanup and recovery.
Tropical storm Isaac has weakened further and is now a tropical depression. It spared the Caribbean despite warnings that it could have brought widespread destruction. The eye of the storm passed over Dominica around midday on Thursday. The Prime Minister reported no deaths, no injuries or damage to property. As a result, a state of emergency was lifted at 9 p.m. on Thursday instead of noon Friday. Public officials should be returning to work as usual. Students, however, get to still stay at home. Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley says the Caribbean was lucky this time, but they can't continue to rely on luck. That's why she's pushing other nations and her own to do more to combat climate change.
We have been a world leader in solar water technology for almost 50 years, and now we intend to be one of the first examples of how carbon neutrality and climate resilience can be achieved across an entire economy. We intend to reassert ourselves on every international front we can engage to combat climate change, because we are in a fight for our own existence. Indeed, it is for that reason that we have set 2030 as the target for us to have a fossil fuel-free economy.
And on the other side of the world, the super typhoon Mangkhut hasn't made landfall in the Philippines, but it's already bringing strong winds and rains. Thousands have been evacuated, but there's still an estimated 5.2 million residents in its path. Winds could reach up to 205 kilometers per hour. Businesses and schools are closed as people wait to ride out the storm. Staying in Asia, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is in China to discuss political and economic cooperation. Maduro was invited by the President Xi Jinping. He laid a wreath in honor of the Chinese Revolutionary General Mao, and he's already met with China's Foreign Minister and the head of the National Development and Reform Commission. The two nations have signed multiple agreements, according to the President, who addressed the Commission.
Today we are signing 28 agreements that ratify the path of shared investment development, billions of dollars of investments. Thanks to the solidarity of China-Venezuela relations, Venezuela faced its circumstances. And I can say today, dear Minister Wang Yi, dear He Lifeng, today, September 14th, Venezuela is standing, is struggling, and is in better conditions, better than ever before.
We'll take a short break now and we'll return in a few.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Antigua and Barbuda's government has said that its exclusion from the visa renewal waiver with the United States is based on its support for Venezuela. The waiver would eliminate the need for citizens to pay in-person visits to the U.S. Embassy in Barbados in order to renew visitor visas. The government isn't ready to buckle because of the support they've received from Venezuela since 1974. Venezuela also helped to transport Barbudans to Antigua after Hurricane Irma last year. The Antiguan cabinet says the United States is an important ally, but they're not going to abandon their friends over visa concerns.
The cabinet determined that it had to be as a result of the support of these three states for the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. But Venezuela has been exceedingly good to Antigua and Barbuda. Venezuela, as you know, forgave us $250 million worth of debt from the PDV. They reported that we could bargain with them over the inclusion of Antigua and Barbuda, but that bargaining would result in Antigua and Barbuda jettisoning the friendship with Venezuela.
And in an earlier program, I spoke to our Antigua correspondent, Gemma Handy, about the situation. She explained the new U.S. rules have complicated matters for citizens, but they are in full support of their government's position on the matter.
It causes considerable headaches and expense for people here to have to fly to Barbados to renew their visitor visas. It's fairly expensive. It's a few $100 US for a round trip. Just to put that into perspective, the minimum wage here is around $3 US an hour. So in addition to the time, it's also quite costly as well. People here are obviously not very happy about it. I think sentiment largely, they're in support of the government's position. Lots of people here have been very grateful beneficiaries of the support we've had from Venezuela. So, I mean, the opinion is a little bit mixed as well. Of course, people are also reluctant to do anything that sort of could upset the US and put us in bad stead with them too. So lots of differing opinions here in Antigua and Barbuda.
Now, 34 Venezuelan migrants are home from Colombia as part of the Return to the Homeland plan. This group's story is similar to their compatriots who have already returned. They face hardships they never imagined. Sometimes they slept on the streets. They've dealt with racism. Government officials have confirmed an increase in the number of migrants going to their local embassies, trying to get a ride back home.
I feel happy. We feel supported by the government, which is helping us to return, because we could not return on our own. We were unemployed and we were disparaged, just for being from Venezuela. Truly, we have met good people and bad people here, and maybe we were just unlucky. I have also run into many of my compatriots who are thinking about returning.
And we have more from Paulo Fernandez in Colombia.
The group of 34 Venezuelan migrants who left Bogota under the Return to the Homeland plan have arrived in Bucaramanga after a 12-hour bus trip. Another 40 migrants are joining this group who will then make their way to Venezuela. The people on the trip have continuously expressed their gratitude to the government program that is allowing them to go home. They say they are happy to see their loved ones again.
And an alleged pedophile has arrived in Bogota, Colombia, after being extradited from Venezuela. Known as the Bad Wolf, Juan Carlos Sanchez is accused of sexually assaulting nearly 300 children. He was arrested as soon as he landed in Venezuela, and the abuse allegedly took place between 2007 and 2008. The former commander of the Colombian Army, Mario Montoya, has appeared before the Peace Tribunal in Bogotá. Montoya is the highest-ranking military officer to testify at the tribunal as part of the peace agreement with the FARC. The court's mission is to judge the crimes committed during the armed conflict. Investigations against Montoya point to his involvement in civilian executions presented as soldiers' deaths in combat. Chilean authorities have raided 4 more Catholic Church offices looking for new evidence related to the child sexual abuse scandal. A report lists 119 pedophilia cases currently being investigated in the church. Chilean Bishop Juan Barrios has resigned after he was accused of covering up sexual abuse, which took place in the 80s and 90s. Bolivia continues to lead the charge for de-dollarization, a move against the power of the US dollar. We explain in this report.
Bolivia remains the leader in the de-dollarization on the South American continent, with figures nearing 100% of the national currency used for savings and transactions, according to the first semester economic report from the central bank.
We can proudly say that at this time, more than 98% of bank loans are made in our national currency, and more than 87% of deposits in savings accounts are also made up of Bolivianos. This is something that no other country in Latin America has achieved before.
A decisive factor in maintaining economic stability and a strong national currency is that exchange rates have remained under control. The dollar has cost 6 bolivianos with 96 cents for the past 7 years.
Más del 98%.
Achieving and maintaining stability in currency exchange is one of the requirements for economic strength.
The stability of the national currency, the boliviano, contributes to people's confidence.
While other economies have dollarization levels in the 50 to 60% range, Bolivia records nearly 0%, after suffering through dollarization levels of nearly 100% back in 2004.
These factors have made it possible to strengthen the economy. It is expected to be one of the fastest growing in the region, growing 4.4% this year alone.
We have registered the lowest inflation rate in South America. High growth and low inflation is a very difficult combination to achieve. But data from August shows that credit disbursed through the financial system to the population is the highest ever.
Another outstanding fact about the financial sector is its ability to maintain low interest rates. The interest rate at the Bolivian Central Bank is a mere 0.5%.
The Foreign Minister of Uruguay says negotiations between the Southern Common Market, known as Mercosur, and the European Union have stalled. Rodolfo Nin Novoa warned that expectations for the meetings must be kept in check. Representatives from Mercosur met with EU officials this week in Uruguay. According to Nin Novoa, regional issues complicated matters for mutual cooperation. In particular, he named the upcoming elections in Brazil and the change of the government in Paraguay as stumbling blocks. Students and workers protested in Costa Rica on Thursday against the police invasion of a university. Thousands marched through the capital to condemn the police for violating the autonomy of the university and for beating up students. The protests are part of an indefinite strike against a proposed tax reform.
The student movement and the working class are not separate. We stand with the same fist raised against tax reform, against repression, for all of our rights that have been stolen. We have a common destiny to continue the movement.
The ministry, the government is unable to see this and see that this is one of the most determined civil protests in the country. They don't understand anything.
Our correspondent in San Jose brings us more on day 5 of the strike and the standoff with the president.
It's the 5th day of the indefinite national strikes here in Costa Rica. Various labor unions have gathered in front of the presidential palace. They are demanding changes in the fiscal plan so that it benefits the workers. This is what labor unions are demanding on this 5th day. They have also said there won't be a general protest like the one on Wednesday, with more than 300 people. But instead, smaller protests are taking place across the country. President Carlos Alvarado has said that he won't negotiate with labor unions while they are protesting. This is what is happening in Costa Rica at the moment. The strike continues. We'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Now we head to Brazil, where more than 100 artists are celebrating diversity in the biannual art exhibition in Sao Paulo, Brazil. It is the 33rd anniversary of the world's second oldest art exposition after the Vienna version, having started in 1951. 600 works are trying to make diversity coexist within different themes as they explore them in different ways. We're going to take another short break. Don't go away.
With developing events being presented through analysis, our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. 3 Palestinians, including a 12-year-old, have been shot dead by Israeli forces along the Gaza Strip. According to the Health Ministry, apart from these 3 deaths, at least another 50 people demonstrating along the border were injured. Protests broke out at the end of March 2018, and deadly clashes continue almost on a weekly basis ever since. At least 179 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces, mostly during these demonstrations. The Spanish Parliament has voted in favor of moving the remains of the dictator Francisco Franco. Since his death in 1975, Franco's body has lain in a mausoleum capped with a giant cross in the Valley of the Fallen near Madrid. The right-wing People's Party and the Citizens Party both opposed the move, but the parties of the left, as well as the Basque and Catalan nationalists, have all voted in favor.
Buenas tardes a todos y saludos desde Madrid.
Spanish Parliament passed a law on Thursday to exhumate the dictator Francisco Franco's body. The law has approved with 172 votes for, 164 abstentions and 2 against. These 2 votes belong to 2 Popular Party's deputies who made a mistake. Both right-wing Popular Party and Citizens abstained from voting. Votes supporting the law belong to the Socialist Party, Together We Can coalition, and Basque and Catalan nationalist parties. Popular Party and Citizens said their abstentions are due to the lack of urgency with this law. The parties also saying this ruling is a cover to hide the government's bad management. The government instead says that their abstentions go against democracy and dignity. The law can be modified and negotiated. The government's goal is to negotiate with Franco's family for them to take care of the remains. The dictator's family says they don't agree with the exhumation and they will take care of the government to court. If the family and the government do not reach an agreement, the public authorities will have to take care of the body and give it to a decent burial. Popular Party also opposes to the exhumation and will try to file an unconstitutional appeal to the Supreme Court. The law has passed on Thursday amid cheerings in what the left parties consider to be an historical victory.
Iraqi Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi has announced initiatives tackling public problems in the city of Basra. Abadi said a new water system will be installed in the city where deadly protests broke out early September over polluted drinking water and energy problems. More than 30,000 people were hospitalized, leading to angry residents burning down government offices. And that story has brought us to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website. We are telus4tv.net/English. You can also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telus Your English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you for watching.